Dispense supplements in office.
Well, I guess a commercial popped up. Hello, everyone. We are live. Greetings and welcome to Conflict Radio. I just had a commercial pop up on my computer. I see we've got a few people in here already. Bugsy, Akram, Hugh Godarn. Good to see you. Paul Beska. Always great seeing you in here. We've got a really interesting guest today. Tracy Austin is joining us. She is an award-winning TV host of episodic talk show, investigative reporter, and a published author of 3 titles. Having studied at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama in London, Tracy began her on-camera career in England in 1998 with a series of educational and governmental videos. She began her broadcasting career in the USA from 2002 onwards with her cable TV talk show Let's Talk Paranormal, which has won 3 Telly Awards for its excellence. The show was broadcast in California, New York, Arizona, and Iowa. She is also a freelance reporter and has written various articles for both British and American magazines, particularly on subjects of the highly strange but true. Tracy has been a radio host for the Women's Radio Network and is currently host for KGRA Radio, broadcasting live shows weekly. Tracy, welcome to Conflict Radio. How are you today?
Thank you very much, Michael. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Not too bad. You know, it's great to have you on. You wrote a book on a subject that we haven't quite covered here on Conflict Radio, and I've been wanting to get to it, and you know, the episodes just seem to fly by. And this book is called I Survived Beyond and Back. It's compelling accounts of near-death experiences from those who have glimpsed the afterlife. Can you tell us a little bit about that book and what got you interested in reading about it, or I guess writing about it?
Well, let me see. I've been interested in the subject for a very, very long time, Michael, and I didn't actually start out by writing this particular book. It was going to be about strange encounters inside morgues and funeral homes.
You like haunted things?
Yeah, you know, experiences that people within the funeral home had, and particularly inside morgues when, you know, someone passes away for whatever reason, under what circumstances, are taken to the morgue, and what some of the workers had experienced there at a city morgue. But it was very difficult to try and get people to respond and to talk to people in that environment. So I had to go to a plan B, and plan B was this book, I Survived Beyond and Back. And it's taken me about 1.5 years to write. I actually planned to write this book in 2017. However, I'd lost my father in November of that year, and so I had to go through the whole, you know, grieving process of losing my dad and getting through all of that. And then I started to write this book, and I kind of started to write it at the right time, because in the back of the book, I actually, which is chapter 14, I write about after-death communication with my dad, which I've been having now for 3 straight years. Every single month I'm having communication with my father. So I just had to write about that. Nothing to do with near-death experiences, but obviously, you know, my dad made the full transition, and so I wanted to let people know that you not only are near-death experiences real, but also having the communication as an after-death communication is also very real.
So did your dad, was he a religious guy? Did he believe in an afterlife? Did he think it was nothing? Like what were your dad's beliefs growing up?
Well, my dad believed in God, obviously, first and foremost. Not particularly a religious man. You know, we didn't grow up going to church or anything like that. We were Christians. We're Christians. But he definitely had a belief that there is a God. And no, he did not believe in the afterlife. And you know what's strange, Michael? My family lived in the UK. I moved here to the US in 2001. And I would repeatedly have conversations with them via Skype so that we could, you know, see each other on camera. And I would bring up quite often the subject of when you pass. I know that there's an afterlife when you pass. And I used to say, and I know you don't want to talk about this, but whoever passes first, whether it's you, Mom, or you, Dad, you have to find a way of coming back and communicating with me, because I know there is another side of life that's separate from the earthly plane. So my dad would kind of roll his eyes, he'd look away, and he'd just kind of appease me by saying, "Okay, Tracy, I'll let you know." So he wasn't a believer of it. And then about 5 months after he'd passed, I actually started to get communication, which I didn't know it was my dad at first. I actually had a couple of spiritually psychic mediums, great friends of mine in the UK, tell me that it was my dad communicating.
Well, so, I mean, that's phenomenal. I had a friend of mine, and he's a really good friend of mine. He passed, I guess, almost a year ago, and we had a deal set up. We used to play chess all the time, and we used to climb mountains. We'd bring a little travel chess set with us. We would climb a 14,000-foot, say, in Colorado, and we'd play chess on top of it. Just because that's just what we did. And
Right.
He had throat cancer, so we kind of knew he was getting to the end. And he said, I told him, I said, I'm going to set a chessboard up, and I'll always have that chessboard set up near my desk. Just move a piece, and then I'll move, and we'll play chess after you're gone. So that's kind of what we always agreed he would do. But the only thing that I said, he passed. I set up the chess set. I moved a piece, and then something had happened, and the whole chess set. I came out one day, and the whole thing was on the floor.
Oh, really?
Like he just knocked the whole set over. Like, I don't want to do this.
Now, your cat didn't do that, right?
Well, I don't know. I have no idea. It could have been the cat. It could have been him. But I haven't set it back up yet. But he hasn't. And my friend Steve, he never believed in anything. He believed that when you died, that was it. You were gone. And even his wife, I've talked to his wife a few times, and she says she has dreams where she'll visit him, and he's in the mountains working on a cabin for them, like when she's ready, and a cat that they had that passed was on top of the roof with them, hanging out. I'm really sorry to hear about your dad. It's a bummer.
Well, thank you.
It really is. It really is a bummer when things like this happen. But.
Oh, it is. And it was my dad actually passed of renal failure, and at 83 years of age. So I mean, it's a fairly big age. But I thought my dad would have another 10 years of life left, because he'd never have surgeries in his life. None of our family members had surgeries, me included. And so, we've always been healthy people. And it's something that I thought my dad would kick. I thought he would, he would get better. And, but no, he didn't. And he got worse. And I actually got to see him a week before he passed. So I do believe that he was holding on for me to arrive from the U.S.
So you had a little bit of a warning on that then?
Well, kind of. One of my spiritualist medium friends kept kind of nudging me by email that I had to get on a plane and go see my father, because my father was being prepared for spirit, is how she put it. So I kept thinking to myself, no way, my dad's going to get through this. He's going to be fine. My dad's a healthy man, so there's no way. But every time I'd see him on Skype, he would, he'd look okay, but he would have lost a little weight. And then this final nudge came from her, and she said, you really do have to get on a plane. She said, because I'm being given the date of November the 20th. So you kind of have to take these things with a little grain of salt, because I know that even the best of spiritualist mediums don't always get dates right and the years right. So I could only go the week before, myself and my partner, and so we got on a plane. It was a non-stop flight to the UK, and I got there, and actually my friend had said to me, my spiritualist medium friend had said to me, now when you get to see your dad, you're going to be shocked because he doesn't look like he looks on Skype. He's going to look different. Well, when I arrived at my parents' home, yes, I was very, very shocked. He looked about 103, not 83. So there had been a lot of physical changes within that week or two of last speaking with him on Skype. So, of course, as I said, I took the whole date with a grain of salt of when that passing would be, and I arrived on the 13th of November, left on the 19th, and sure enough, as soon as we got back on the plane and we came back to the U.S., my dad passed on the 20th. So she was, in fact, very correct with that.
Wow,
and of course,
even the date was correct, huh?
Even the date was correct, yes. I mean, she's an extraordinary spiritualist medium, and I've known her for about 30 years, so I know how good she is. But again, I still took it with a grain of salt that sometimes dates cannot always be accurately predicted. And so, you can't always be 100% right. And I'm very aware of that, even though she's very exceptional. But she was correct. And so we had to come back because we had 3 cats to take care of, and the person that was taking care of our cats had to go into a different state to, conduct business. So we had to get back. So I had no choice. I couldn't stay any longer. But I can tell you that whole communication thing that happened with him, I had as you mentioned in my bio, I had a TV show a number of years ago in California called Let's Talk Paranormal. And I used to have many, many publishers send me books of authors to have them as guests on my show. And so just after my dad had passed, the following month, we moved house here in Las Vegas. And it was a bigger house, so we had to shop for more furniture. And we bought this beautiful bookcase. And so one day when we've moved in, I was taking all of my boxes from the garage, and I was stacking the books on the new bookcase. And I came across a book, Michael, that I didn't know I had. And it was called Into the Light by Dr. John Lerma. And he's a doctor of 2 care hospices in Texas, Houston, Texas. And they're very well-known care hospices. And I picked up this book and I thought, why have I never read this book? And it looks so interesting. It was talking about what people see in care hospices, the dying see 3 to 5 days before passing. And so, again, it's one of those subjects that I'm totally fascinated with, and I couldn't understand it because I'd not read it. And inside was the letter that had come from the publisher that was dated 2007. So it was 10 years earlier. So I thought to myself, well, I'm going to read this book. And so one night I went into the guest bedroom where it was nice and quiet, and I started to read a chapter of this book, Into the Light, about a lady named Mildred who had stomach cancer. And obviously she knew she wasn't coming out of the care hospice alive. And so one morning, Dr. Lerma goes in her room and checks in on her and asks her how she's doing. And she said, well, I'm doing fine, Dr. Lerma, but I need to know, why my deceased loved ones are coming to visit me in my room. So he said, well, as not to frighten her, I said to her, well, they possibly are, Mildred, but they're coming to check on you like I do every morning, just to make sure you're okay. And so, yes, that is probably happening. So she says, well, let me ask you another question. Why am I seeing angels in the corner of my room? So he asked her to describe those angels. And she said, well, they always stand in this particular corner. They reach the height of the ceiling. They are thus wide, and they illuminate all of this beautiful bright white light from their bodies. She said, and they said to me, Mildred, we cannot communicate with you unless you initiate it. And this was all telepathically done. So she said in the book that the doctor writes about that she told the doctor she initiated communication with them. And that's how the communication began. So at that point, Michael, when I read that, I sat back on my chair And I looked up to the ceiling, in the light, and I said, oh my God, I said, I wish my angels would talk to me. I would love for my angels to talk to me. And all of a sudden, boom, the light goes out. And so I sit there for a moment, not knowing what's going to happen next. Nothing did happen. And so I looked at the clock on the bedside table. It said 10 p.m. And I thought, well, it's kind of late, so I'll just put this book away and I'll read it again tomorrow. Well, as soon as I got up off the chair, I didn't actually walk halfway past the bed, and boom, the light came back on. So I knew at that point that somebody wanted to talk to me, but I didn't know who. So I kind of scooted myself up to the side of the bed, and I said, look, I don't know who you are. I don't know whether it's you, my angels, trying to talk to me, or if it's you, Dad. I have no idea. I said, but thank you ever so much for visiting. I know that it takes an awful lot of energy to do what you've just done, so thank you very much. And please feel free to come back and visit whenever you feel you want to. So I was one with the light for the moment, and then I switched off the light. I walked out, shut the door, and that was it. Now, I didn't tell my partner at the time that this had happened because he is was a very skeptical person about this kind of thing. So I thought, I'm only going to get some ridicule, so I'm not going to go there as yet. So what I did, I sent an email to 2 of my spiritualist medium friends in the UK, and funnily enough, they both said to me exactly the same thing. Tracy, this is not the work of angels. Angels do not need to flip lights on and off to get your attention. This is your dad communicating with you. So I kind of hoped that my dad would communicate, but remember, he was very skeptical. He didn't believe in that. So I obviously now know that, yes, my dad does believe in the afterlife. He's communicated to me. So what his thing is now, he switches the light on in the guest bedroom. And I always know when he's visiting because I can see the light from underneath the door. So that's when I know he's here. And the door is always closed, by the way, because of having cats. We don't allow cats into that particular room. So the door is always closed. So that's when I know he's visiting. And it's quite phenomenal. And it's been all times of the day or night that he visits. And it's actually been 3 years straight. And it all started in April of 2018 after starting to read that particular book.
Huh. Well, there you go. You never know what's going to happen if you pick up a book and read, I guess.
That's right. That was the catalyst.
Let me give a shout out here to Dr. Strangelove, I see. Slim Tiskin is here. Pink Chicken and Blue Chicken are flirting in there as always. Scott Quigg is in the room. We've got, let me see, John Paul Shelton's here. Antonio Scalasi, how you doing? Chuck Bam's in the room. Pyramid 7, I see. How's everybody doing? Hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the experiences that you've written about in your book. Now, how did you go about finding these people? Did you just search online for people who have experienced after death, or did you know anybody personally?
Yeah, pretty much, Michael. I joined some groups online, some after-death communication groups, and also near-death experiencer groups. And I just simply, put out an ad that I was looking for people's accounts that had had near-death experiences. And I got some really great people reaching back out to me and said, yeah, I had an account. I had a near-death experience that happened to me. And they wanted to share it for the book. So I was very fortunate with that. I also had interviewed a doctor on my radio show with KGRA a couple of years ago who has her own book out and talks about her patients who'd had near-death experiences in the ICU. And that doctor's name is Dr. Lauren Belge, and she also has a phenomenal book about near-death experiences in the ICU. And so I had a conversation with her on radio to our radio show about those patients' experiences. So quite some fascinating ones there. But yeah, the book is a mixture of different scenarios where people have had their near-death experiences. For example, the very first chapter of chapter 5 is about Tommy's near-death experience, who actually had his experience on a motorcycle after he and his wife had a motorcycle accident. And they both lost their lives, actually. And
did they both come back?
She didn't.
Okay.
But Tommy did.
Well, this sounds like an interesting story, if you could tell us.
Yeah, well, what happened with this, they were taking a vacation to attend a family reunion in Colorado. And Tommy and his wife, Julie, set out on their motorcycle to head off to Colorado. While they were there, they were going on a reunion, a school reunion, and while heading out to the school reunion, the next day they decided to visit Julie's best friend, his wife's best friend, who lived in Norwood. This is when the tragic accident happened. And basically it was a beautiful July summer day as they traveled along Highway 50 through Montrose's area, enjoying the summer ride and the scenic view. And it was only about a 30-minute drive before reaching their destination to Julie's friend's home. But at approximately 4 o'clock that afternoon, the driver of a pickup truck spontaneously decided to make a left-hand turn directly in front of their motorcycle. So, responding rapidly as he could, Tommy quickly forced on the brakes, causing his motorcycle to skid approximately 180 feet before flipping and slamming both of their bodies with an intense force into the rear end of the truck. Now, Tommy remembered nothing of the crash. He remembered nothing of the crash's actual impact. And his wife, Julie, instantly died at the scene. Now, eyewitnesses and other passers-by, they stopped their cars immediately. They dialed 911 as some of the onlookers ran frantically to assist them as they lay lifeless in the middle of the road. And although physically unable to move, Tommy found himself in and out of consciousness. And at one point, he suddenly felt himself thrust out of his body, his physical body, and inexplicably standing at the roadside, observing both he and his wife's body. And he stood watching the scene of the accident as the first responders arrived. And he'd never had a near-death encounter before. This was the first time. And although he didn't think of it as a near-death experience, he just simply considered himself dead. And at that point, Tommy remembered thinking to himself, wow, I just died. Which I thought was like, oh my goodness, to say that to yourself, wow, I just died. So he found himself drifting in and out of consciousness before entering that particular space that one enters when they cross over to the other side. And he felt extremely perplexed at what was happening and what was going on, as he encountered all these different sensations of his spirit body being pulled in many different directions. And he simultaneously could observe the crash scene, witnessing both the arrival of the police and the paramedics, and was watching from a dual consciousness. And Tommy said how he could mentally see each one of the first responders and the police officers, how they formed their mental images of what had happened at the crash scene. And Tommy said it was as if he could literally see inside each one of their minds, and especially that of other previous similar crash scenes that the paramedics had experienced throughout their careers. The law in Colorado, by the way, doesn't require a helmet to be worn while riding a motorcycle. And in the police report, it stated that neither Tommy nor Julie were wearing a helmet that day. Now, that was partly correct, as Tommy was not wearing a helmet, but instead what he'd done was to strap it to his motorcycle. However, his wife Julie had worn a helmet for the entire trip, but due to the crash's impact, it had become loose and thrown off. So Tommy knew that Julie had died with him and could actually see her in spirit form as she stood there by the side of him, as they stood on by the side of the road. They crossed over together. And Tommy said how at various moments he was aware of seeing previously deceased relatives, distant family members who had passed on many years ago, and other people who were unknown to him, who he could not identify. And still out of his body at the side of the road, Tommy watched as the paramedics were now ready to, airlift him to the nearest hospital at Grand Junction. And he says that soon after arriving at the hospital, he was entirely unconscious and remained in this state for 4 straight days. And his physical condition was not good. He got severe injuries such as a fractured skull, fractured sinuses, a considerable dent at the front of his forehead, and his right shoulder needed to be replaced. And he had been immediately taken into surgery. And it was during that surgery that Tommy encountered a second near-death experience, and once again thrust out of his body. He was now watching the doctors perform medical surgery from above, which is typical of a lot of scenarios like that when people do have, surgeries. They're there on the operating table, and they talk about separating from their physical body and being at a height above their bodies, looking down and watching what's going on. They can recall all the movements that the doctors were making, the procedures, the talking back and forth. And this happened to Tommy just the same. And he said at a certain point, he heard one of the doctors telling the other, "We've lost him," and that they should perhaps think of giving up on continuing with the surgery. And at that moment, Tommy remembered thinking to himself that it wasn't up to these doctors to make that decision, and within moments was no longer aware or conscious of what was going on. And he could only later presume that at that point, the doctors must have scurried around the room gathering equipment to give him a round of shock treatment, which after a few attempts had obviously and successfully brought Tommy back into his body, and his conscious awareness was no longer able to see from above. But when Tommy did regain consciousness, he decided not to share his near-death experience with doctors, and for a couple of reasons. He said, firstly, Tracy, he said, I needed to process the whole experience for myself, which understandably would take some time to digest if that happened to you, even if just for a fraction of it, as his near-death experience had now changed him dramatically anyway, and instantly. And he said he could no longer continue living in his life in the physical reality the same way that he had done for the past 50 years, with the same thought process, the same ideas, and the same outlook on life. And so as this happens with most people, Michael, near-death experiences make people look at their lives in a completely different way. And he said, secondly, he felt that with all due respect to the doctors, they would not understand what had happened to him, and that consciousness could even remotely separate itself from the physical body. And
do you think everybody has an experience after death? Because I had a friend of mine, I guess we had a conversation like 15, 20 years ago, but I'll never forget it. She actually died and was dead for like 3 minutes, and I had asked her, what happened in those 3 minutes? Do you remember anything? And she said she remembered it was nothing. It was like nothing.
I've heard that before. Yeah, I've heard people say that before. Maybe, I guess it's, everybody's experience is their own experience, and maybe there has to be a certain, even though there's no time on the other side, maybe there has to be a certain time frame of us in our bodies when this happens to us, of not understanding where we are. And so there appears to be nothing, because sometimes it starts out that way for some people who have near-death experiences, and then things start to happen. And, there's a couple of scenarios kind of like that in my book where there's blackness, there's nothing, and then things start to shift. So maybe just for that length of time, who knows why she didn't experiencing anything other than nothing.
Or she
than-
doesn't
than
remember
blackness.
what it is
Or
she
she just-
experienced. Yeah, it could be like a
exactly.
mind block or something.
Yeah, she may have some form of amnesia from that. I personally have never had a near-death experience. I've had an out-of-body experience, but I've never had a near-death. And a near-death experience really is a subcategory of an out-of-body experience, but it's kind of brought on more forcefully with a near-death out-of-body experience because, due to accidents, trauma, surgeries, things like that can invoke that forcefulness of spirit being thrust out of the body.
So what do you think that there is after death? What do you believe now? After all the research and everything that you've done, all the people you've talked to, what do you believe?
Well, I've always believed that there is some form of existence. There's just something about the human body that, even though we lose our physical body, there is something within us that continues to survive beyond the physical realm. Somewhere there in the ether is our true spirit. I do believe that we are kind of anchored somewhere out there. We may be in our physical bodies here, but I think we are anchored out there somewhere. Part of us is still out there. So I believe that we do survive in some capacity. And, not only has my father been switching the light on in the guest bedroom, but he sends me feathers, he sends me pennies, he sends me hummingbirds and dragonflies, which are magnificent. I mean, how is spirit able to manifest those kind of things from the other side, because they're no longer in the physical, but somehow they're able to manifest that. And at the beginning of the book, Michael, I write a little bit about John Edward, the psychic medium John Edward, who appeared in an interview on the Oprah Winfrey Show in 2007. And she was asking John Edward where this other side is that people go to when they pass. And I thought it was a very good answer that he gave, and he said, my spirit guides are giving me an analogy of it being similar to the internet. And he said to Oprah and her audience, where is the internet? He said, because it's a place that we all know, we all go to, we all communicate through, but we can't go there with the physical body. We have to have a conduit to experience the internet, and that conduit is a computer. And he said it's exactly the same for the spirit world. We can't go there with the physical body. We have to have a conduit. And that conduit is a spiritualist medium who is able to communicate to the other side in order to give messages back. And I thought that was an absolute amazing answer to give, that it was very similar to the internet, being that it's out there. Everybody knows about it. Everybody communicates through it. But we just can't go there with the physical body, and that the spirit world was exactly the same. It's out there. We can't go there with the physical body, but we're able to communicate to spirit through that spiritualist medium.
Do you believe in reincarnation, that we come back as another body with perhaps memories?
I do. Yeah, because I've read scenarios of those of certain events, especially in young children. So I'm convinced. I'm absolutely convinced of reincarnation, and just as truthful and real.
Do you think it's possible that when you mentioned somebody just mentioned this in the chat room, so I'm going to bring it up. Do you think it's possible that when your dad is using these dragonflies and hummingbirds, that his spirit is actually possessing the dragonfly and the hummingbird, and he's the one that's making it fly towards you?
I spoke with my spiritualist medium friend about this.
I'm sorry, I said they start small, right? Just build themselves up to maybe possessing bigger things?
They don't possess them, no. I actually spoke with my spiritualist medium friend about this, and she said, no, spirit cannot enter into a bird or a dragonfly or a butterfly or however, whatever they want to send to you. They are somehow able to manipulate it to guide it to you. So those things are not spirit, but spirit is able to manifest them to bring them to you. And again, in the back of the book, I have photographs of the dragonfly that would visit me from June of 2019, non-stop, every day. And it would sit on a branch of a tree right outside my patio. That is not the behavior of a dragonfly. It would sit for about 4 hours and not move. So I have photographs of it, and I've written about a test that I did with it when it arrived. And again, the funny thing is, one of my spiritualist medium friends, after having a reading with her in the UK, said to me, "Tracy, what's this about dragonflies and your dad?" And I said, "I have no idea, because what he sends me is hummingbirds." And she said to me, "No, this isn't a hummingbird, this is a dragonfly." And I said, "Well, I have no idea." Well, things didn't start to happen. Now, that was in April of 2019. It started to happen in June of 2019. And I was periodically visited by a dragonfly that, as I said, the behavior was the most strangest I've ever seen, because dragonflies are fast. And they fly off here and they fly off there. Not with this one. And it would plop itself down on a branch of a tree and remain there for about 4 hours. So when I saw this, I started to take pictures. And I would say to it telepathically, "Now, Dad, if you have sent me this dragonfly, can you give me a sign that you sent it?" And what happened, Michael, was that the dragonfly lifted off the branch and it moved in a anti-clockwise motion. It did a little circle, an anti-clockwise motion, and landed back down. And I said, "Well, that's impressive." I said, "Do it again." So it lifted off the branch. This time, making this circle, it went in a clockwise motion. And I didn't realize until after the fact that actually what it was trying to tell me, what it was trying to give me, the symbol, was the sign of infinity. It was a number 8. That's the sign of infinity. So I said, wow. I said, "Well, look, if you can perform this next test for me, then I'll absolutely know that it is you, Dad, that is getting this dragonfly to do this. If you can switch the light on in the guest bedroom at the same time, I will absolutely, unequivocally know for sure that it's you." And I kid you not, I took photographs of those hummingbirds at 2:16 p.m. Within that minute, I walk outside, because we have a great big balcony here. I'm able to see the guest bedroom from outside. And there the light was on in the guest bedroom. So my dad had given me that sign that, yes, it is me that has sent those, dragonflies to you. So that was at 2:17 p.m.
So do you think that there is a spirit master, like somebody that everybody has to answer to when they die, like I guess God, or maybe you go somewhere else and you have to deal with the devil, or what are your aspects on? I mean, obviously, if we die, it would be great if we could just kind of roam around, do our own thing, But are there rules? I guess
I would think there is. I mean, I don't know for sure. But I can tell you that I think there is. I think we are met, like John Edwards said, and many other spiritualist mediums, nobody dies alone. There's always someone there to meet you on the other side. It's a little bit like when you labor to come into this world, and we come down our mother's birth canal in the womb. Our family is waiting for us to be born. They're waiting for us. It's the same thing on the other side. When we cross over, there's always someone waiting on the other side, whether it's spirit guides, whether it's deceased relatives, whether it's Jesus, or whether it's God. There seems to be, on many occasions, somebody waiting to greet you. And so, yes, for sure, to answer your question on that, I think there is somebody there to meet you, just like these spiritualist mediums have said. And I think we are allowed to roam free also, because I remember my dad coming to me in a dream. And I know these things are not dreams, but it's one of the ways that they do come to you. to get messages across. And I remember asking my dad in the dream, "What's it like there, Dad? Before you leave, what's it like there on the other side?" And my dad kind of threw his head back and laughed, as he used to do, and he said to me, "It's like being with the gypsies." And I thought, wow, what a statement to make. It's like being with the gypsies. So in that, it kind of is. What do gypsies do? They roam free. They go here, they go there, wherever they want, whenever they want. So that's what he was trying to tell me, that you can pretty much do whatever you want to do. It's like roaming, with the gypsies.
Yeah. So could you tell us another story in your book? Is there another experience that you could tell us about?
Yeah, there's quite a number, actually. And I'm trying to think of a good one.
Some of your favorites.
Oh, well, they're all my favorite, to be honest with you. And they're all my favorites, Michael, because they're all so different. There's different things that happened. Like I said, for example, Tommy with his motorcycle accident. Yvonne that was taking medication for sleep apnea and arrhythmia, heart arrhythmia. She was taking medications that caused her to have 2 near-death experiences in a time frame of 3 weeks apart. So there's someone else, Deborah, who as a child, 4 years old, had a near-death experience having her tonsils removed. And then there is a gentleman named Terry who had a near-death experience inside a grocery store. And he said, I can remember the exact moment of what I was doing when it happened. He had a heart attack in the grocery store, putting apples inside a grocery bag. And that's when it happened. And there's a couple where the people don't know if it was an actual near-death experience or if it was an OBE, if it was an out-of-body experience. But there's a case in here in the book, a gentleman named Miguel. And Miguel Mendonca has been aware of various angelic visitations throughout his life, especially 2 specific and intense encounters with angelic beings. And he said he's not entirely sure whether the experience should be labeled as an NDE or an OBE, but nevertheless, he says that both experiences were authentic and ones that he'd never forget. So in 1994, it was either late 1994 or early 1995, Miguel doesn't remember the precise year, a profound angelic experience happened that presented itself while driving late at night with friends. And at the time, Miguel was a student at a local college just outside of Winchester in the UK, and he was studying forestry. And in the car this particular night, driving with 2 friends, Miguel sat in the middle of the back seat as Ben was the designated driver and David as a front seat passenger. And he said the car that Ben was driving at the time was an old 1-litre Vauxhall Nova, which is an early type of British car. And so they were in this vehicle, and on this particular night, they were heading from the direction of Brighton Hove towards Winchester in Hampshire. And it was pouring down with rain. And having just left the traffic lights behind, driving further on down the road, they could see a long stream of oncoming traffic as far as the eye could see that was coming into town. And not having driven too far down the road, suddenly in the opposite lane ahead of them, a car decided to overtake, leaving the line that it was moving in. And so Miguel estimated that Ben must have been driving at the speed of around 60 miles per hour or more. And as the oncoming car now accelerated towards them, they could unmistakably see the front of the vehicle to be that of a BMW saloon that was speeding towards them and facing directly head on. And he said in a microsecond, the car was now only 6 feet in front of them. And as they waited for immediate impact, they were bracing themselves for immediate impact, he said everything suddenly stopped. He said time instantly stood still, followed by a massive flash of bright white light that engulfed the entire car, and the sound of absolutely nothing but silence was heard. And Miguel said he experienced a complete physical shift and was removed from the human timeline. And he said he was immersed and surrounded in this bright white light that he can only describe as an absolute nothingness. One of the other people in the book, Yvonne, also mentions this light, this bright white that she was submerged in, to be that like fog. She says, you can't see beyond a certain distance. And as you look around you, you can't see past it. That's what the light represented to her, which was fog-like. But the next thing that Miguel remembered was of himself becoming conscious. And he still existed and was self-aware that he had no physical body whatsoever. And he said he instantly became what he described as a small speck of consciousness within the bright white light, pure consciousness without emotion. And that's what a lot of people tell me, Michael, when they have these near-death experiences, that they don't have any emotion. They don't carry emotion with them, and they also don't carry the ego, funnily enough, which is very interesting. However,
I would imagine that you just care less about a lot of stuff.
Well, your awareness is different than how it was on the earth plane. Yep. So you've left that world that you once belonged to. The physical no longer matters to you or has any interest to you, because now you're in a whole new dimension of existence. So
have you heard any accounts of really bad things happening?
Not really, other than when I interviewed Dr. Lauren Belge on the radio show, I was asking her, had any of her patients seen hell or experienced something unpleasant. They hadn't experienced hell, no. And then in the majority, the NDEs are positive ones, and people's lives are transformed. But there was one story she told me of a woman who was extremely mean. And during her near-death experience, she was shown what a mean person she was. And as soon as she transitioned in her near-death experience to the other side, what she was greeted with was darkness, lots of screams, and she said she could see faces that were all distorted in front of her, and that it was her worst nightmare. And she said she was actually shown what a mean person, a mean-spirited person she was on the earth plane. And so she didn't realize she was this kind of person. But she said when she came back, she decided consciously she did not want to be that kind of person any longer. She was going to change her ways and change who she was. And she did. And she became a much better person. So I asked Dr. Belge, well, what would you say about, taking certain things with you from here to there? And she said, yes, it is very possible, and she thought that did in fact happen. She said that because what she's spoken to her patients about, what she's heard from them, is basically so below as above. So what you experience here, how you are here as a person, you take with you. You can't escape that. She never actually, like I said, she never saw that in herself. She didn't realize she was a mean-spirited person until she was shown that. Then she decided she was going to change who she was, and she did.
Okay, so Paul has a question in here. He says, so are haunted houses, etc., just one of these spirits stuffing around, or are they something else? Meaning, if there's a haunted house where they say that there's a ghost, is that a deceased person, or is a ghost an entirely different entity, do you believe?
It could be a whole manner of things, actually, Paul. It could be that the spirit of a deceased person is lingering around. Sometimes spirit can do this because they have unfinished business to take care of. And that's what ghosts are. They're stuck. They can't quite cross. And that's why people do see apparitions, or they experience loud bangs and knocks and things moving in the home. I wrote a book called Welcome to Haunted Las Vegas, Nevada a number of years ago, and they were specifically cases in people's homes. They were residential hauntings, and a lot of people think that old houses are the culprit of inviting these kind of things, when really that's not the truth, Michael. I discovered that new homes can also attract these things. It depends on the person living in the home, and it also depends on the land of what that property is built on. I'm here in Las Vegas, so we find that a lot of land out here happens to be old Indian land. And so this is how a lot of hauntings can start. So it all depends. It all depends.
Yeah, there's an area in Huntsville, Alabama here where I live where I guess there's a grouping of like 6 or 7 houses, all on this, this land, this area of land, and every single house, every single person that lives in every one of these houses swear that there's Indian ghosts and all kinds of weird apparitions and things going on on all of their properties. It's crazy.
Right, and that's right. Indian land can do that, especially burial land. I was just watching an episode of Skinwalker Ranch on the History Channel a few weeks ago, a brand new series of shows. Of course, that I think it's a 501-acre piece of land in Utah called Skinwalker Ranch. It used to be owned by Bob Bigelow, who owns the Bigelow Aerospace. He actually sold it to a businessman named Brandon Fugel. And you'll see if you, your listeners, watch the series that comes on a Tuesday night on the History Channel, he shows you around the Skinwalker Ranch and the strangest, craziest things that they cannot explain. UFO sightings, portals opening up, strange beings being seen, balls of light, you name it, it's all been experienced on this ranch. And apparently the land is actually a curse. It's cursed by Indians. So that's another, it's an interesting fact that Brandon Fugel has said it himself, that apparently what he's heard is that the land is cursed from Indian land.
Do you think that we would be? You think that we would be given a choice, like if we wanted to haunt our childhood home or something, like say I died and I just wanted to go and hang out in the house I grew up in for a little while, just so I can feel like I'm home again or something? Would I be able to do that, or would I have to die in that house to be able to do that?
No, you can travel back wherever you want to. That's your choice. For example, I mean, the house that I'm in, my dad never got to visit me in this home because we moved a month after he passed. And in fact, I hadn't had my parents hadn't visited from the UK since 2012. And so I'd moved house a month later, yet my dad knows how to find me, which I find absolutely fascinating. My dad's never been to this home. So it's as if anything that you think about that you want, you can go there in an instant. Nothing is difficult to do. Whatever your heart desires, whatever the spirit desires, where you want to be, you can be there. So it's not a challenge for spirit at all.
Yeah, it's definitely a curious thing, isn't it? Dying.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's an illusion. What I've come to find out through my research is that it's an illusion. Death is an illusion. All we leave behind is the physical body.
So you said that you've had out-of-body experiences. I would imagine astral traveling comes to mind, right? Is that what you're talking about, or are you referring to more like a quantum jump?
Well, what happened to me, Michael, I was living in England at the time that this happened, some 20 plus years ago. And I had gone to bed one night, and I'd literally just gotten into bed. And I hadn't even started to drift off to sleep yet, so it's nothing that I imagined. And suddenly, I felt my body, all of my body, my physical body, start to roll out of bed to my left-hand side. And I remember saying to myself as my body started to roll, I grabbed the duvet because I couldn't believe what was happening. And I expected to hit the floor. Well, I didn't hit the floor. And there was a moment of nothingness. There was an absolute moment of nothingness. And then I didn't know where I was until I really started to observe my surroundings. And what I found out, Michael, was that I was actually up at the ceiling. And I knew it was the ceiling, first and foremost, because the house that I was renting at the time had what we call in the UK as artexing on the ceiling. A little bit like stucco that we have here in the US. It was a pattern that was made in plaster, and it was a circular pattern in the plaster on the ceiling. And a lot of particularly older homes have that kind of thing in the UK. So when I came to and I found myself parallel with the ceiling, I said, oh my God, I'm up at the ceiling.
Were you touching it? Like, was it stopping you from exiting the house?
It didn't last long, to be honest. It was only about, 12, 15 seconds at the most. I knew I was at the ceiling after a few moments. So I tried to move along the ceiling as if crawling. If you can, turn the whole scenario around as if that was the floor and I'm on all fours and I'm crawling kind of thing. Using the palms of my hands because I could feel the plaster on the palms of my hands. So I also knew from the feel of where I was. And I started to just kind of crawl and shift my legs and move along the ceiling. And I never had for one instant the thought of looking back at my body that was lying in the bed, because I swear to God, I'd have panicked, I'd have freaked out. How do I get back in that body is what I'd have said to myself. I don't know how to get back. But somehow I didn't do that. I didn't look at my body. I got no inclination to look at my body. But my body, my soul, my spirit or whatever was out of my physical body. It seems we have it has its own GPS. It knows how to find its way back in. And that's what my soul, my spirit did. It found its way back into the body.
If you were out of your physical self, how were you able to touch the physical ceiling?
I don't know how it works, but I was able to do it. I don't know how it works. It's as if my form still remained my form, like I was contained in something, but I was still able to experience that sensation.
Did you see yourself on the bed?
Did I what, sorry?
Did you see yourself on the bed below you?
No, as I said, I never had that inclination to look back and see myself.
Oh, maybe you were actually levitating then, huh?
Oh, yeah. I mean, had I have done that, like I said, I'd have freaked out because I'd have thought to myself, why am I there and I'm also here at the same time? How the heck do I get back down there? How do I get back into my body? But I never had that inclination to look. Somehow, like I said, it seems that our bodies, I can only really speak for mine at that time, it's like my body had its GPS system to find its way back in without trying to, worry about it or stress about it or anything like that. And the next morning, I remembered what had happened to me, and I did some research online. I didn't know it was called what I'd had was an out-of-body experience at the time. But after researching, I thought, oh, right, that's what I had. I had an out-of-body experience. But the weird sensation was that I first initially felt myself rolling to the left side of the bed and out of the bed, that I thought I was going to hit the floor. But I didn't. And there was just this space of nothingness momentarily, and then I find myself up to the ceiling. So the body has its own intelligence of how to deal with all of this. There's nothing really to stress about. It's just our own perception, our own ego, or our own thought system of being worried. But the body has its own natural way of finding its way back to where it was.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing, and I suppose even when you're quantum jumping, and I'm sure you know what that is. It's just, like the theory that we live many different timelines with the same, I guess, the same person has many different timelines that they live, right?
Yeah,
And
Exactly.
you can actually
Yeah.
go from timeline to timeline, kind of like, I guess it falls into the whole Mandela effect thing. But do you think that, I guess that if I have like 20 different timelines, and I'm sure I have more than that, that all of my timelines have the same soul, or is it a different soul in each timeline?
Well, that's $1 million question, isn't it? I would say it would have to be the same soul. I would think that's my take on it. It'd have to be the same soul experiencing those different timelines.
Yeah, that's
And
crazy,
this
isn't
it's what, sorry?
that's just sort of, that's so crazy to think about.
Oh, it really is, yeah. And I think, it's like a lot of people that have hypnotic regression for past lives and things like that. It's the same soul in that person, but experiencing different adventures, different scenarios. It's like a few weeks ago, I read something online of this little boy in Scotland, and I was fascinated by it because it was he claimed that at 4 or 5 years old, he was the reincarnation of Princess Diana. And that all started when some friends of his family had sent his mother a card for something that she had done. They sent a thank you card, and on the front of the card was Princess Diana. And the little boy was 4 years old at the time and said, "That's me when I was a princess." So they thought at first, they just thought he was kind of being cute, And, oh, it's kind of a cute thing to say, and hoping he'd forget about it. But then something else occurred, and he saw something on TV, and he said, "That was me when I was Princess Diana." He spoke about how he remembered, and this is before he saw anything, about Princess Diana, that he talked about having 2 boys. And he talked about a brother that he had, and nobody had heard about this brother of Princess Diana. But as it turns out, she did have a brother of this name that the child gave. This was all at the age of 4 years of age. And she said, the mother asked him, well, what happened? And he just said something to the effect of, he could hear the noise of sirens, and then he was no longer a princess anymore. So that's obviously when the car crashed inside the tunnel in Paris, hearing the sirens of the police and the ambulances arrive, and the princess's life was over at that time. So he remembers it up to that point. And today, if that, how can you deny that? I was going to say today, if that's true, it has to be true. How can a 4-year-old boy bring all of this information up, especially about the brother that no one knew that Princess Diana had, is legitimate. It's fact,
Yeah.
So but Princess Diana's soul is in this little boy in Scotland.
Hugh Goddard has a question for you. He wants to know, when you have an out-of-body experience, if you can take your clothes with you.
Again, it's a good question. I don't know, but let me ask you, why would you want to take your clothes with you?
I don't know. Somebody else said in here, yeah, that's interesting. Can we take off our ethereal clothes? And another person, astro traveling, can take your clothes.
Well, we don't really need our clothes. We don't need our physical clothes any longer because we don't have a body to wear them. We don't need to use them. We become pure spirit when we go over to the ethereal side of things, in that particular vibration. So we don't need clothing of any kind.
All right. Well, we have about 25 minutes left, and my chat is absolutely blowing up with everybody wanting to know about UFOs. They want you to talk about UFOs. So we've got to pivot over towards that whole thing. Did you see the 60 Minutes special last night?
I did not, but I'm going to be having a look at it tonight, and I'm fascinated that finally something is stirring in the world of UFOs. We always hoped that disclosure of some kind was going to come, and we know that something is about to come in June, I believe, something from the governments that are going to, well, what they're going to say is, I don't know, to be honest. I don't know what they're going to say, but are they going to tell us the whole story? Probably not. They're probably just going to stick on the story of UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. Yes, they're real. Yes, they're here. We don't know what they are.
Do you think that they are calling them UAPs because they wanted to create their own hashtag?
Probably.
Right? I mean, think about that.
If,
like all these, if you type UFO in Google, you get everybody who isn't a part of the mainstream media, and if you type in UAP, you get everybody who is a part of that mainstream media. It's like you have two types of disclosure. You have a disclosure that the government wants to disclose, and that's always UAP related, and then UFO related are people like me and you who are just doing a normal show that don't have any, puppet strings attached to us, so to speak, right?
Right. I don't think the word UFO or those three letters are ever going to go away. I don't think that's going to change. I think people are always going to call them UFOs. It's just become what it's become in society. I don't think people are going to start suddenly calling them UAPs. But I think it's something that maybe the take or the angle that the governments want to use, they don't want to call them unidentified flying objects. That's what they are. But to people who've had experiences, it's more than just an unidentified flying object. I mean, what about the people who've had abductions? Again, I wrote in my book, Alien Encounters in the Western United States, that 4 million Americans on a poll, a Roper poll, had come forward to say that 4 million Americans had had experiences of abductions. Now, the governments are kind of behind time because they're just talking about lights in the sky as UAPs. We're far beyond that, Michael. Somebody needs to speak up and talk about what is really going on, and that, yes, abductions are real, and yes, that alien implants are real. My dear friend, Dr. Roger Lear, who passed away March 14th in 2014, very dear friend of mine. I met him in England many years ago. You actually were in on a surgery with him, weren't you? Yes, I was. And I was honored that he allowed me in there. My ex-husband, he's my ex-husband now, but my husband at the time, was filming this whole thing for Dr. Roger Lear to take to conferences so that he could show the surgery to people. And I was just there really for moral support for her and was allowed in. So this was an airline stewardess, and I believe it was Southwest Airlines who she worked for. And she'd had an experience, I think it was in 2003 when the surgery happened. So some 20 years prior to that, she was with her boyfriend in a hotel room, and I can't remember where it was. I think it was somewhere in California. And they one night were told telepathically to go to the window. They didn't know why. And they saw a disc-shaped craft outside with lights all the way around it. And she said, and I got to hear this from the horse's mouth, so it's not like this is hearsay or second, third hand. This was first hand from her. And she said, the next thing we remembered was a ball of blue light that came through our hotel room, through a closed window. So it passed through a closed window, and she said, and we just watched it as it circled around the room. The next thing we remember is it's morning. And she said, we got up, we started to have a regular morning, we started to just talk normally, and suddenly, I think she said, she was the one that said, remember what happened to us last night? Something really strange happened to us last night because we were told to go to the window. We saw this craft in the sky, this disc-shaped craft with lights all around it, and then this blue light comes into the room. What happened? What happened after that? Well, the boyfriend didn't want to talk about it. And she said to me that actually that was the very last time she ever saw her boyfriend again that day. He didn't return any phone calls. There was no nothing. That was the last time she saw him. She said, but when I was in the shower that morning, I noticed a lump on my arm, my right forearm. She says, and I could kind of move this, whatever it was, under the skin, upwards towards her, the higher part of the upper part of her arm, the forearm. So she said, very strange, didn't have that before now. So she leaves it in her arm for 20 years. And she sees my friend Dr. Roger Lear on a TV documentary about UFOs and alien implants. And she said to herself, I wonder if this is what I have, because I did have a UFO sighting, or a UAP sighting. So
I don't know how she didn't dig that out.
Well,
I would dig it out with a spoon if I had to.
Well, it was quite deep actually under the skin, but she could feel it. She could feel it there. She sees Dr. Roger Lear on a TV documentary. She just wonders if that's what she has, because she remembered having the sighting. And then she reaches out to him, and they meet. They have a meeting. He interviews her about what had happened and so on and so forth, and puts her through all the kind of testing that Dr. Roger Lear used to do. And he comes back with the X-rays and says, now, this isn't a cyst, because if it was a cyst, it would be attached to tissue. And it's not attached to tissue because you can move it around your arm. So he said the next question is, and it's not metallic, by the way, either. So the next question is, do you want this removed or do you want to keep it in? And she said, no, I want to have it removed. So that's when the surgery was planned and scheduled, and she was in there, and I'm standing there watching all of this. And it was Dr. Roger Lear and another doctor at the time, and they cut into her forearm. And to get the instruments, they lift her skin up like a little tent, and they go in to grab this thing. And literally, I kid you not, had I not have seen it with my own eyes, this thing shot up her arm. It's as if it had intelligence of its own, and it's as if it was saying, you're not going to get me. I'm going to go somewhere else in the arm. You're not going to get me. Well, what they did is they had to cut the skin deeper, and went in deeper with the forceps to grab this thing. They managed to get it. And it was the most strangest little object. It was like a clam. It was in two halves, and it was a yellow creamish color with a black strip that ran down the middle of it. And she said a very strange thing that most abductees say when they have these implants removed, and that is that she felt a whole new sense of freedom when this thing was out of her body. So it's almost as if it had some kind of control over her. Maybe it was seeing what was going on through her. Who knows? But she did say she felt a whole new sense of freedom once it was out.
Do you think that it was affecting her? I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you think it was affecting her thoughts and her actions?
Probably so. I know that a lot of people, including Dr. Lear, when he first got involved with alien implants, suspected alien implants, that they were tracking devices. And he thought they were tracking devices for a while. But he quickly came to realize, once more and more people were brought to him who had these objects that they wanted removed, that they weren't tracking devices. And if you've been taken, your mother's been taken, and your mother's mother's been taken, because what these beings are looking for is family lineage. There's something in our DNA, some kind of characteristic in our DNA that they're looking for and that they want. And if you don't have it, then they don't want you. But they are following a family lineage with that. But he said that he thought they were tracking devices, but quickly learned, no, they're not. They are dealing with monitoring your DNA, of what's going on in your DNA. So I find that very interesting and scary at the same time, because these beings have said to a number of abductees that we can find you anywhere. We don't need to put tracking devices in you. We can find you anywhere. And that was the case with one of his people in Brazil, when he went out to Brazil to talk with some abductees there, which was the case with one lady and her mother that had both been taken. And they both had implants in their large great toe on, I think it was the left foot. And these beings told her on board the ship that they showed her an insect in flight on this screen, and they said, basically, look at this insect. We can track this insect anywhere on the planet. We don't need to put an implant in you to do that, because we each have our own unique DNA.
You know, I wouldn't imagine that the implants would even need to be that big. I mean, they have all this nanotechnology now, and we don't have flying saucers, at least not publicly, right? I mean, why would they even need to have an implant that big at all?
They're not actually that big. They're like the size of a BB. So they're not that big at all. And the weird thing about it also, Dr. Roger Lear, most of the metallic ones that he had removed were either T-shaped or they were delta-shaped, and they'd come from the left side of the body. Whereas with hers, it was biological, and it came from the right side of the body. Now, whether that's just, sheer coincidence, just fluke of what it is, who knows? But it's funny that all of those, and I think he was up to the 17th implant removal before he passed.
Were there any of them that are the same?
Yeah, there were a number of them that were same. Many of them have had the same implants that are delta-shaped or T-shaped. And this is what made Dr. Roger Lear believe that something was going on. He said, I've removed everything from the human body. I've removed hair, I've removed plastic, I've removed glass, you name it, I've removed it. So when he was presented with these two people from different parts of the United States with UFO researchers, he said, I just thought to myself, I know what I'm going to remove here, because there's going to be nothing different from what I've removed before. He said, but I was so wrong, because both of these people had the same object in their bodies, people that didn't know each other, and from different parts of the United States. And these objects were identical. So we've gone beyond all of this with what our governments are trying to, or will try to tell us, or claim to be looking into, of just lights in the sky. We've gone way beyond that. So the truth really does need to be told.
Yeah, I mean, they according to some people, they have a whole human hybridization program going, and they're working with the government to do all this stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see.
I don't doubt it at all.
What comes out? What happened to all of the implants he removed? Where are they now?
Well, it's a good question. He did have a non-profit organization. I think it was called a 501c non-profit organization, where he would fund these objects to be analyzed by different laboratories in and out of the United States. Some of them had managed to make their way around 5 different laboratories. Who knows? I don't know where they are now since he passed, whether his family are in control of that. And I've even asked a scientist friend who used to work with Dr. Roger Lear and who's been on my show a few times and had an alien implant in his great toe and had it removed. I've asked him if he has any inkling of what happened to those implants, and he's not sure. He doesn't know what happened to them.
And that video that you said you recorded, is that available for people to watch?
I haven't seen it out in the public at all, and I believe that was filmed in 2000 I want to say either 2003 or 2004. So I've not seen that, no. So I don't know where that is either.
Well, you should try to hunt that down, huh?
Yeah, I guess I could ask his scientist
now,
friend.
is there a connection between near-death experiences and aliens?
I don't know if there's a direct connection. I haven't heard anybody having near-death experiences and seeing aliens. That doesn't tend to happen. I've not experienced that in any research. It's always deceased loved ones or angelic beings. But I know that a lot of researchers I talk to talk about something called, the paranormal soup, that everything is kind of just thrown in and it's all part of the same thing. And I guess it is. I guess it is to some degree.
It's all about our consciousness, right?
It's all about consciousness, yes. But I've never heard of anything of someone having a near-death experience and experiencing alien beings. That would be a first if somebody's, encountered that.
Yeah, well,
and then would it be a near-death experience? I don't know.
There's apparently a warehouse, I guess, where they stored near Roswell, where when they collected these bodies from the Roswell crash, they were moved to this warehouse before they were transported out of Roswell at some airport near Roswell. I'm not sure exactly where it was, but they say that one of the ghost aliens haunts that warehouse today. What do you think of that?
Interesting. Yeah, that could be true.
Yeah, I mean that's just crazy stuff to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So, what have you been working on lately?
Absolutely nothing. Because my book has taken me so long to get off the ground, a year and a half of writing it. I just wanted to take a break. I don't know how other people do it with writing so many books. Nick Redfern, who's my fellow Brit, dear good friend of mine, who's on my show next week talking about his new book. I mean, he's in his something 60th book. I mean, how the heck do people do that? I just don't know. I honestly just don't know. I'm at 3. And the other 2 had taken me a year to write. This one took me a year and a half. So I just don't know how people can keep popping them out like that. So I'm just focusing on my shows at the moment. I'm not, and I love to write, and I probably will write again. But there's nothing there in writing at the moment that I'm involved in any writing project. Just right now dealing with concentrating on the shows. Yeah,
people don't understand the amount of work that goes into doing these shows.
They really don't. No, they really don't, Michael. Work.
You just don't have any idea until you get started with one, and then you're like, "Wow, what did I get myself into?" You gotta write books on top of that. Well, maybe Nick doesn't have a podcast that he
doesn't. No, he doesn't. That's his kind of full-time job, writing.
He's just putting out the books like boom, 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 right?
Exactly. Yeah, and Preston Dennett, another dear friend of mine, he's another one. I mean, he's on his 40-something book.
Yeah, we've had him on a couple times. He's a lot of fun.
He's great. I love Preston. A super nice guy. He's always fun to interview. And
have you been abducted personally?
Well, I've had some experiences that lead me in that direction. One I've had regression for, and one I didn't have regression for that I remembered. So some very strange experiences that I have to say it looks like possibly yes. But that's another show, isn't it?
Oh, no. Can you give us a quick overview of that experience?
The one I remembered is when I lived in the UK. I'm sorry?
You had to do a regression, you said?
Yeah, I did a regression on, I'd gone missing from a motel room in Florida many years ago in the early 90s that I had regression for that one. That's kind of a longer story. But, so I won't talk about that one right now, but the one I was conscious of was when I lived in England, and my partner at the time was a fellow musician like myself. And I had woken up one morning. He used to do yoga. He was into yoga big time. And so he would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do his yoga routines. And I was in bed and I was sleeping. And I started to wake, and it was about 6 o'clock in the morning. And as I was coming to, I saw 2 small beings at the foot of my bed on each side, the left and right side. And these were about, I would say about 3 feet tall. They weren't typical grey beings. These beings, whoever they were, they had like little Hessian sackcloth robes on with pointed hoods, a little bit like a kind of like a monk's habit, with kind of like a Ku Klux Klan type of pointed bit to the headpiece, the hood. But I saw no faces. It was just totally black. So whether their faces were pushed back into the hooded part, I don't know. But that was completely blackness, so I never saw any faces. And as I saw them, just standing there motionless, I started to scream, but nothing was coming out of my mouth, which is typical with a lot of scenarios like this. And all of a sudden, as I was screaming, this little hand from the right-hand side where I was laying, and I've got small hands, I could fit its hand inside my hand, it was that tiny. And it put its hand over my mouth and it pulled me back onto the pillow. And I was out. I was out. The next thing I know, which seemed only like 5 minutes, but it wasn't, it was about 8 o'clock. And it seemed like 5 minutes had just passed by, so it was still on my mind what had happened. So I threw my bed sheets back, I ran downstairs, and I went into the room where my partner was doing his yoga exercises at the time, completely ruined his moment of yoga and quiet and peacefulness. And I said, because I was shouting his name is what I was screaming out to the top of my lungs, and nothing was coming out. So I'm trying to explain that I was just shouting for him. And he said, Tracy, what are you talking about? I never heard anything. And I found that really bizarre. And I told him what had happened. And he just listened to my story. I mean, he believed what I was saying. But it was odd how I was able to scream, and I could feel that intensity behind my voice and my whole being that I was screaming, but nothing was coming out, and they just have a habit of being able to switch that off. So maybe it was a little grey who put its hand over my mouth. I don't know, but they weren't two greys standing either side of the foot of the bed. These beings, I don't know who they were.
I have about 8 hours of missing time back when I guess I was 19 or 20 years old. And
Did you really?
I have a few flashbacks of it here and there, and I can tell you it wasn't nice. It was a very violent experience.
Really?
Yeah, it was very violent.
Oh, maybe you'll have to share that with me sometime.
Yeah, actually I haven't really talked about it too much. I'm having Peter Robbins on soon. I heard he's the guy to talk to about that, so him and I are going to talk about my experience a little bit, so that'll be pretty interesting.
Yeah, Peter's a great guy. He's another friend of mine. I love Peter. He's great.
Yeah, I can't wait to get him on. It's not gonna be too much longer now. So, well, you want to tell everybody where they can find you? I guess we're done.
Absolutely, yeah. You can find me on KGRA Radio every Sunday night live, kgradb.com. And that show you can find on all the platforms live on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time. And that's live on all the platforms, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, a lot of other, Spotify, things like that. They're all live shows. I have my YouTube channel, The Tracy Austin Show, where if you miss a show, you can actually see those shows on my YouTube channel. And you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all the books are available on Amazon. This one, I Survived Beyond and Back, is getting really great 5-star reviews. There's about 11 5-star reviews on 5-star reviews on there right now. So that's fantastic. So if you wanted to know more about the book, it's right there on Amazon.
Oh, yeah, it's awesome. And all the links to everything Tracy is in the description box below. Tracy, Distorted Reality says that you would be great at reading audiobooks. You have a sexy voice.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I've been told that before. People say, oh, just talk your British accent. I said, well, what do you want me to say? Oh, just read the yellow pages.
Yeah, don't worry about writing books. Read them, right?
Read them, right? Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks very much for coming on the show today. Please stick around a bit, and I'll talk to you once I wrap things up here. Remember, You can always find us guys on conflictradio.net. Just go to www.conflictradio.net. Check out our store. We got some really cool shirts and T-shirts and things in there that you can buy. These shirt designs I think actually pretty cool. So check it out. You can find us on Apple iTunes and all of your normal podcast catchers. Pretty soon we're going to be launching on Rockfin, I believe it is. We're going to be doing a Sunday night live show specifically on Rockfin. So I will definitely start posting links and stuff to that. So keep up with that. Rockfin seems pretty neat. We'll be able to say a lot of things that we aren't able to say on this platform. So we'll be doing a live show over there. That'll do it for us today. We'll be back on Thursday with Jared Murphy. Until then, batten down the hatches and